We'll take it from here.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We'll Take It From Here. This episode is The World's End. My name is Cuban Thor, aka Holden.
And this is Father Malone, also known as Michael.
Alright, Michael, before we get into our main topic, I think we should get into our happenings for the week.
Happenings!
What's happening, hot stuff?
Let me tell you what's gonna happen.
What's happening, Holden?
Well, the first happening I could think of is that it looks like we're getting a X-Men Dark Phoenix movie for sure.
Ooh!
The whole cast is coming back, even Jennifer Lawrence.
I know, oh thank God, because we can't get quite enough of Mystique in all of these films.
You know, it's funny because it's like, as much as I don't like Jennifer Lawrence in these movies, I like her in other movies just fine.
I love her in all, I even like her in these movies, but it just seems like once she became an Oscar-winning, super famous actress, they just tailored the entire thing to her.
Yeah, I mean, she kind of reminds me of Natalie Portman in the Thor movies, because Natalie Portman is a fantastic actress, but in the Thor movies, she, like, phoned it in. I feel like Jennifer Lawrence does the same thing in these movies. She kind of phones it in, except for First Class, and that's why the First Class is the best of those three.
I agree, and she also spends way too much time as not Mystique.
That is also true. That is
considering
very true.
The character that we knew when Becca Remain, when she was playing the part, that character was like, I'm not going to be a human. This is me. Like, I'm not going to hide who I am.
She was mutant and proud.
Right.
And they preach that all the time in these movies, and she's never a mutant. It's actually kind of funny.
And she's always a blonde, pretty girl instead.
I think in the third movie, they just, because she won that Oscar and stuff like that, in Apocalypse especially, they kept her out of the makeup the most, it seems.
Yeah.
Until
well, I'm sure that's the case, where it's just she just doesn't want to sit in that makeup chair for 8 hours a day.
I mean, if I had her pull, I don't blame her.
Right.
Because I wouldn't want to do all that makeup.
Maybe she should just not do the movie.
But at the same time, they should have done a better script and things like that. Maybe, I don't know, not incorporate her as the main character.
Yeah. When did Mystique become the main character of the X-Men?
She was the leader of the X-Men. Like, I think Xavier was pretty much on his own little acid trip of a story with Magneto. Magneto had another family. Oh my God, that movie.
Jesus, I know.
It was not good.
That's a bad movie.
It really wasn't good. And I get some of there's some cool spots in that movie. Just talk about Apocalypse for a second. Like, there's a spot where near the end of the film you see what Cyclops sees, like, through his visor. And I thought that was really rad. But, like, overall, like, oh my God, Psylocke was the worst. Olivia Munn was just not a good choice.
Yeah, I can't stand her in general, and the costume was kind of cool.
The costume was probably the most legit costume in there, but even the moment in the trailer where she cuts the car in half and flips down, it's just like, oh God, it's just Olivia Munn. You know, if they didn't spoil that in the trailer, it would have been much cooler.
Yeah,
it would have redeemed it a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, because you wouldn't expect it.
But it's still Olivia Munn, and she is terrible. You know, I get the sense from Olivia Munn that if she had gotten a job with, say, ESPN and not G4 initially, she'd be the big sports girl, and we'd never have to deal with her on a nerd level. She just seemed to be like, I want to be on TV, and this is the place that hired
She
me.
was dating a really famous quarterback for a while, so I kind of don't know. Like,
well, no, I'm just saying, like, she got a job with G4, now she's a geek goddess. If she had gotten a job with ESPN as a commentator, we wouldn't have to deal with her at all. She certainly wouldn't be in an X-Men movie.
I think she's kind of more of just a C-list, B-list celebrity now. I don't know if she's a geek goddess anymore. There's not too much people in the geek realm that like her.
Stop putting her in fucking X-Men movies, then.
Well, she was just in the one, man.
Yeah, but she's going to be back. You know she's going to be in the next one.
Nah, I doubt it. But who's potentially could be in the new one is Jessica Chastain.
Right.
Who's a fantastic actress. I know we both enjoy her. And apparently she's looking to play potentially rumored Lilandra from the Shi'ar Empire, which is very interesting. The Shi'ar are the people who actually don't like the Phoenix, that fear the Phoenix and want to destroy the Phoenix or stop the Phoenix from ever happening. So it kind of seems like they're going to be coming in and be the antagonist for the Dark Phoenix movie.
Interesting choice.
I mean, they're definitely buying off
I think they're trying to get away from Last Stand, where they have already sort of visited the Dark Phoenix thing, so they're trying to get this whole other thing going.
Well, I think they're trying to go Earth realm, Earth realism stuff is going to be like the Deadpool area, and I think they're trying to push it to be X-Men be this high caliber fantasy, intergalactic even to a point. American Gods is fantastic. I started watching it.
So good, every single episode.
I'm about, I think, halfway through episode 6.
So you're almost done.
Yeah, I'm almost done with it. man, the first episode, I was like, what am I getting into? What's happening?
Yeah.
Who's this lady absorbing a man with her vagina? What's going on? And then in an episode, I'm like, okay, I'll watch another one.
It sucks you in, and I think I love all the every sort of prologue where we get a story of a different god, how they got to America. It's just amazing.
It's my fiance's favorite book, and she is raving about it. She says it's really true to the main book,
Yeah,
the main
definitely.
story. Like, there's some parts that are, of course, changed and enhanced from the book, but to be expected in a TV show, especially if you're going to try to go more than one season.
Yeah, I think they made Matt Sweeney a bigger character than he actually was in the book.
Man, Matt Sweeney's
But
so much fun.
He's a great character.
You know who I like too right now? I mean, I just got introduced to him in the last episode. It was Vulcan.
Yeah, he was great.
I love that actor.
Corbin Burnson.
Corbin Burnson. Like, he's fantastic.
Yeah, not enough of him these days.
No, I mean, he had that show for a long time, Psych.
Was that his?
Yeah, that was.
Oh,
that
he was
him.
on it. He was
Sean's dad on that show. Yeah,
Ray
he was
Wise
great.
was on that show too.
Yeah,
right?
there's a lot of people on that show that are popping up. Dule Hill just came out with a movie called Slight that actually looked really interesting. It was like kind of an urban superhero film where this guy had like telekinetic powers or something like that, and he was gonna go like try to help his neighborhood, kind of like a gangbanger Spider-Man or something like that. I don't know. Like, I don't know how to explain it really. It's really interesting actually. It's
What
such
else?
a good thing. New Blompkamp has his Oak Slab. The first short film actually came out for it.
I have not watched it yet.
Named Rocka. I watched it this morning. It's really good. Man, the effects he has in this for a short film is fantastic.
Well, he probably has like quite as after District 9, he's probably got his own production company for doing all the
I don't know
effects,
how
so.
he does it, man. Like, it's crazy. Some of the things he put out there. The main creature is kind of like a mixture of an alligator and a predator.
Nice.
And it's fascinating looking, just on some of the details he has into this
Is it CG?
creature. I think.
Yeah?
I don't know.
Well, that's good. That's the best thing you can say about it.
I feel like it's practical mixed with CG. Because there is some shots that definitely look CG. I mean, it's a short film made by a small production company.
Right.
So obviously they can't put all the money into it. It's not going to be like Rocket Raccoon, like right next to Star-Lord. It looks amazing. But it looks really good, and the effects on it are just amazing. And Sigourney Weaver's in it. It's a good 20-minute watch for sure.
I will definitely check it out.
Yeah. We also have the Black Lightning trailer. We haven't talked about that yet. What do you think of that?
Black Lightning, not to be confused with Black Manta or Black Panther.
Or Static Shock.
Or Black Adam.
Yeah.
I like it. It's my understanding it's not going to be part of the Arrowverse. It's going to be its own standalone show, which is not the worst idea for a series.
No.
And I also like the idea that we're finally getting a superhero where we're not watching them come into their powers. It's a guy who hung it up years ago and is now resuming the mantle.
Rediscovering his powers and stuff like that.
I think that's really good. And, just like with the Black Panther trailer, it's good to see this many African Americans on screen at one time.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I like about it, too, and it's actually something really smart that the CW has developed into their show, and I think they got the criticism from actually like the Marvel movies and some of the DC films of, hey, why didn't Iron Man come up and try to help Captain America and Winter Soldier?
Right.
And I feel like CW was like, hold on, DC has this great thing called a multiverse. Let's use that.
Yes.
So let's put Supergirl on her own world.
Right.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
And if they really need to get her, they can go get her. But other than that, you can't just pick up the phone and have her show up.
And the only overriding factor right now is the fact that the Flash and the Arrow are in the same universe, and people still say, why doesn't the Flash come over and help Arrow all the time?
It's true, though. I mean, they're like, maybe 600 miles apart. The Flash could be there in 2 seconds.
The one thing I'll say is Flash can't be everywhere, thankfully.
Yeah, no, I know. But still, there are times, we've said this before, but there's so many times in Arrow where they're like, there is nothing we can do. I'm like, call Barry Allen. Somebody get on pick up your cell phone and call Barry. He'll be there in 2 minutes. He'll take care of everything.
Well, it's funny, in an episode I just watched, I want to say it's like, it's the episode they were trying to recruit Dinah Drake, finally.
Yeah, okay.
And Oliver Queen calls Coast City PD or something like that in regards to her, and he just texts Barry, and Barry runs in and is like, whoop, and puts a note in the guy's desk, says, oh yeah, this guy's legit, don't worry about him.
Yeah.
It's great. That's really cool.
It's always great when they cross over, but...
And then some other things that are going on. It looks like
Dark Universe. Let me talk about the Dark Universe.
Oh yes,
for 1
please
second.
go on.
Okay, because I just saw The Mummy.
Yeah.
Starring Tom Cruise.
The trailers left a lot to be desired. Is that how you feel about the film?
Oh, it was... I'm never going to watch it again, for one thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What a way to start your your own multiverse character thing. I mean, I know that they're going to go ahead. People keep calling this movie a box office failure, which I think it is here in the United States. However, it's already done like $200 million worldwide. It's going to...
Oh, yeah, it's crushing it worldwide.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. It is a Tom Cruise movie, ultimately. The thought was that this movie's not doing well, so we're not going to get the rest of the Dark Universe. Like, there's no way we're not getting the rest of this Dark Universe.
Right.
Like, you don't sign Johnny Depp and Javier Bardem to contracts and not pay them. And, they're going to have to pay them regardless, so they're probably just going to make those movies anyway and see how it goes. And it's my understanding that Universal's going to farm out some of these films. Like, I think they're getting Blumhouse involved.
Interesting.
To up the sort of horror ante, which is sorely lacking in The Mummy.
Really, some of the things I always thought was odd about their direction that they wanted to take. Mm-hmm. I get on the first movie you kind of want to make a statement, so to speak. I did quotations there, guys, by the way, when I said statement.
Air quotes.
Air quotes. It's something that you want to make a statement on. But at the same time, I don't feel like these horror characters really fit a big blockbuster film. They feel like they need to have like that Deadpool money, that like $70 million, just have good CGI, make a cool tight movie, explore your character.
Yeah, even the biggest horror movies, like you take something like Dawn of the Dead or any of the Romero zombie movies, like it's a worldwide problem, but it's still an intimate story. It's still about 2 or 3 characters having to deal with it. Having it be this, like,
for a Mummy movie, I always thought they should have had like a bottle episode, a bottle movie, stuck in a museum, and the mummies terrorizing them.
That would have been great. Here's the best part of the movie, Holden.
Okay.
In the opening scene. Now,
it's in the opening.
Yeah, no, it is the opening scene, as a matter of fact, where a tunnel crew, like the Sandhogs they're called, they're digging tunnels underneath London, and they break into a crypt from the Knights Templar days, where the MacGuffin for the movie is going to be located. Like, it got brought back from the Crusades, and it's here, and this is what the mummy's going to need.
But of course. Yeah.
Okay. So you have these regular sort of government officials, like, scouring the place, at which point this super secret organization, the Shield of the Dark Universe, shows up, and it's headed by Dr. Henry Jekyll.
Awesome.
Played by Russell Crowe.
Is he good at least?
He's great.
Okay, good.
He's great.
All right.
It's nothing but exposition,
Uh-huh.
but he's entertaining. At one point, he turns into Hyde.
Uh-huh.
That's good. He doesn't, like, Hulk out. It's not like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh, good.
It's just like a more sinister version of himself, and he kind of gets a Cockney accent for no reason, but anyway.
Fair.
So, in this opening scene, these S.H.I.E.L.D. agents effectively flood in, and they stop these guys from doing any more tampering with anything in the crypt. And Russell Crowe walks in and says, "We'll take it from here." That's the best part of the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that what really happens?
Yeah.
Oh, we need that quote.
I know, we're going to get it.
That's amazing.
Yes! Oh, this movie's going to be great. It was all downhill from there.
Man, that sucks. That's too bad.
This is a movie where none of the action is exciting. None of the humor is funny.
Right.
None of the horror is scary. I think that covers everything, right?
It pretty much misses on all regards. That's too bad. All the trailers kind of just missed for me. I kind of wanted to see it because I'm sort of a Tom Cruise fan in some regards. I thought Live, Die, Repeat or Edge of Tomorrow, whatever the hell that movie was called.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Whatever.
Then.
Yeah, then.
Now, who knows?
Yeah. I thought that was really good. I thought Emily Blunt was great in that movie. I thought he was fantastic in that film.
That's a good movie. Tom Cruise makes really good movies.
Oblivion was kind of a miss for me. It was just boring.
Right, but they can't. I mean, there have to be exceptions to the rule.
Like Jack Reacher, it was fun, the first one.
I like the first one. Did not like the second one. But all the Mission Impossible movies have their strengths and weaknesses. Look, Part 2 is terrible.
All the odd ones. 1, 3, and 5. No, 5 is coming out or just came out?
I think 5 already came out. I did not like 5.
Okay.
But I like the previous one.
Right. Rogue Nation you liked.
Yes.
Okay.
Was that?
Right? I don't know. See, that's the problem with these Mission Impossible movies.
I know. Brad Bird directed. The one that Brad Bird directed, which is the one where they go to Dubai and he's doing the little flips along the top of the world's tallest building, that was a really good movie. I think that's right.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's... Yeah. Ghost Protocol was the last one.
Yes, and that was directed by Christopher McQuarrie, who is one of the 3 credited screenwriters on The Mummy.
Oh, man.
David Koepp, who wrote Jurassic Park, is one of the writers in this movie, and the movie is garbage.
I think if people don't really have a lot of knowledge of the writing process, it's you see these names attached, you're like, ooh, this is gonna be a good film. But a lot of times there could just be a few lines of dialogue. I know we've mentioned this before, like with the Rock episode. It could just be a few lines here or there, and they still get a credit.
Yeah, no. Like in the case of The Rock, like you can have a line or two of dialogue, and then you don't get a credit.
Right.
The rules for the WGA are you have to have impacted the script at least 50%.
Okay.
So if I wrote a script and let's say it's about a mummy and a guy finds the mummy, right? I'm getting a screenplay credit because there's definitely, no matter who rewrites it, there's going to be a guy who finds a mummy.
Okay.
So they can't take my credit away.
Yeah.
At the very least, they would give me a story credit. So when you see David Koepp, Christopher McQuarrie, and whoever the third guy's name was on screen, that means that they made a significant impact on this script, and it's terrible.
Right. So that kind of brings me to a point of actually I want to bring up, kind of get into one of our last few points before we get into our main topic. I see a lot of people on the internet, on movie podcasts, whatever, talk about how they have a director's impact on films. And I think they're really overlooking a lot of the impact of the writer. Yes, the director does a lot of like the flavoring and a lot of like cool nuanced stuff that you see in a film, but like when it comes to a writer, I think a writer really impacts what you're going to have, what the director can play with. I mean, you can look at Wonder Woman is a good example, but we can get into like Man of Steel. We can get into even Ant-Man. You could see an Ant-Man, perfect example. We'll go with Ant-Man because Edgar Wright is the director of our film today. You can feel Edgar Wright's flavor.
Absolutely.
In his script. But you can see where Peyton Reed focused it and did the Peyton Reed things.
Yeah, you can make a bad movie out of a good script, but you cannot make a good movie out of a bad script.
Exactly. And I feel like when we are talking about, we need more female-driven movies, we need more male-driven movies, we need to have more of these things written by females, written by African Americans, written by the Asian American community, before even if the director is not of that race, of that gender, if that core principle is based on a woman's perspective, of a black man's perspective, an Asian man's perspective, or whoever, it'll be better off than with any director than a script written by a bunch of white dudes talking about how, I think this woman will look good fighting here, and then a woman director gets the part and is like, we can do this and this and this, and it looks cool. It doesn't make any sense.
No, I agree. Speaking of people exhorting other people within the industry, did you see this Elizabeth Banks thing?
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Oh my Christ! So Elizabeth Banks,
kind of misguided.
Misguided. I'd say she's getting an award for directing Pitch Perfect 2, which in and of itself is a monumental joke because that movie is terrible and it's her first feature. And she shouldn't be getting it. She should be getting a Razzie Award if she's getting anything. But then she takes this opportunity to get on stage and call out Steven Spielberg because he's never directed a movie with a female lead.
Now, if I'm not correct here, please correct me, but hasn't Steven Spielberg done like a lot of true stories based off true events, at least?
Yeah, he has. And regardless of that, his first film was Sugarland Express, whose lead character was played by Goldie Hawn. In the 80s, he made The Color Purple, whose lead character is Whoopi Goldberg. His last movie was The BFG, which is about a little girl. So there's three examples to her. He's never directed a movie. At one point during her little tirade, I think Sherry Belafonte was in the audience, and she yelled out, "The Color Purple!" And Elizabeth Banks said, I don't think he directed that. And then somebody else in the audience agreed with her, and she's like, yeah, so I'm still right.
That's horrible.
Right? So there's an uproar because, first of all, why are you picking on one of the greatest filmmakers of all time? And, you could say, well, he should have used his influence to make more female-driven stories. No one was making The Color Purple. That movie was never going to get made. Steven Spielberg got that movie made. And that's not only a movie with a female lead, but it's an African-American female lead, which is, a pretty big deal for, 85.
I mean, I hate to pick on the guy, but if this comment was directed towards, Michael Bay, I would totally have bought it.
Yeah, there are so many
Spielberg.
There's so many filmmakers who just make bullshit and only want to do guy-centric movies that why pick on Spielberg? It's so crazy. So anyway, there's a huge backlash.
Yeah, I could see it.
Did you read her apology?
No, I did not.
Jesus Christ, man. She's like, I need to apologize to Sherry Belafonte.
Oh my God.
Because I dismissed her
Right.
during the speech, and I spoke to her afterwards, and she was nice enough to forgive me. And, you know, I was talking about Steven Spielberg, but what I was referring to was his most recent movies. I don't want to lessen the impact of The Color Purple as a film, but of course, yeah, his most recent movie was also a female.
You know,
and you know what? So this is even better. I read an article, it was in the Hollywood Reporter, and they reached out to Steven Spielberg to see what his reaction to the whole thing was. And they only got his representative, who said, sorry, Steven can't comment on that. He's busy making his next film that stars Meryl Streep.
Nice. That's fantastic. So, like, I could kind of see her side a tiny bit. Not directed at Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
But, like, wanting more women-led films, I think, is a great cause. There's not enough. But you don't want to aim that to Steven Spielberg, who's done women-led films.
She had a very good
done
point.
Diversity,
which there's not enough female written, produced, female-directed films. There needs to be more. But like, she completely muddied the water by taking on one of the guys who's one of the best filmmakers of all time, who actually has made female-driven.
I think that's it for our happenings for the week. I think we should get into our main topic.
Yes,
The World's End.
The World's End, not at World's End.
No, thank God, not at the World's End.
No,
oh my God,
because I can't watch that again.
The third film of the Cornetto trilogy, from Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg. I believe Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright wrote all the films.
They did.
Speaking of writers' influences, you could definitely feel their influences throughout all three films.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Whenever I think of a director like, oh, you know who could have made that good? I always think David Fincher.
Right.
But Edgar Wright is a massive force, man.
Yeah. I completely agree. Like, say what you will about the Scott Pilgrim movie, it has its issues, and but it's a fun film regardless.
I disagree. I think it's great, beginning to end.
Really?
I don't have any. I have zero issue with Scott Pilgrim. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Well, let me backtrack for a sec. I think it's a good film too. Mm-hmm. I enjoy it, but I could see where people find fault into it.
What, the ending?
The ending, and
he should have been with knives. Who cares?
Some of the random, like, I would have liked, actually, to be honest, in that film, just talk for 1 second about that one.
Yeah.
Some of the fights and the characters that he's fighting, I wish they were explored a little bit, which is what the
there were maybe too many fighters.
It's kind of like one of those things where I wish this movie was made like today, in like 2017, where it probably would get a second film easily. Especially with
people would be a little more ready for it.
I think it was kind of ahead of its time. So that's kind of something where I don't know if we'll ever talk about it on the podcast outside of here, because it is a good film, but it was kind of ahead of its time, and it could have been explored so much more. I think that's my main problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, Edgar Wright. I mean, you could just see his influences throughout his movies. He did that TV show Space, which was a fantastic show. Yeah, oh my God, Edgar Wright, man, like. I can't sing his praises enough. This dude's a great director.
Did you ever see Peter Serafinowicz's show? Peter Serafinowicz. He has a show called Look Around You.
No, I haven't.
It's a parody of PBS sort of science shows that ran for 2 seasons. The first season was, I think, maybe 15-minute episodes, and it was more like an educational documentary you would see in school. And then the second season was more of a show, and it's set in the 1980s, and Edgar Wright plays the stage manager for the show, so he's constantly on screen. It's hilarious. I'm going to have to lend it to you. It's really
right on, yeah. He's actually in the...
Yeah.
That's right on. He does random voices and stuff from here and there, right? I think he has like a bit part in that movie, the recent movie called Sing. He has like
does he
a small voice role, yeah, and he pops in here and there. I don't know if he's ever that conceited enough to put himself in his own movies.
I've yet to see him in the movie. I know, I think he does pop up, but I couldn't tell you where.
I think he actually might be in Scott Pilgrim, though. I think he's like one of a party goers.
Oh, sure, yeah,
like
but it's a cameo like that. It's not
it's never like he's
a lead role.
Talking a line or anything like that. Yeah. But no, we're talking specifically today about The World's End, which is a movie about 5 friends going on the most epic bar crawl possible, I would say.
Evidently, he wrote the script when he was 21 initially, and it was just called Crawl. And at that point, it was just going to be about the teenagers. It wasn't going to be people like recreating their epic pub crawl.
Right.
But enough time had passed that when they went back to do it, they were like, well, let's make it about us now as opposed to us then. And evidently, sometime between Hot Fuzz and this film, Edgar Wright actually forced Simon Pegg and Nick Frost to go on a pub crawl with him.
That's fantastic.
And he said he got so drunk they had to carry him back to the hotel.
That's so awesome. To speak a little about Edgar Wright some more, I mean, I guess his biggest film that most people know is Shaun of the Dead, which was by far one of the best films I've ever watched.
It's
in my top 10 easily.
Top
10 easily.
Definitely of the Cornetto trilogy, it's my favorite.
Yeah.
It's one of these movies where, people will say it's a parody of zombie movies, but I've never found that to be the case. I think it takes its horror very seriously.
Really?
Yeah, a lot more than like we were just talking about The Mummy.
Yeah.
Like this is an intimate little movie about zombies, and it's frightening. It's like there are consequences.
And then they came out with Hot Fuzz, which was the Shaun Dead equivalent to action movies.
Right, and I think of the three movies, I think that one actually is a parody. Like I think they are making fun of those action movie tropes by recreating them.
Oh, it's a really fun movie. A good character arc, I feel like, because it has development on every character. Like the two main characters, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, both have really good character development, I feel.
A little weird though, because they kind of both end up as fascists at the end. You know,
a tad bit.
They're putting on the black gloves, like they've certainly bought into the authoritarian government ideal of a police officer at the end of the movie. But then, that's where the parody aspect is a little more evident in that movie, where, you can't have, like, super action-y cops and not be kind of fascist.
I think you could talk, like, okay, I think Shaun of the Dead will definitely stand alone on its own merit. Hot Fuzz, you can see Edgar Wright's take on the police state. And how, like, there's benefits to it, so to speak. Yeah. There's a lot of negatives
for action fans.
For action fans.
There's definitely
and then I think positives. To get into a little bit to The World's End, before I get into my point here, let's talk about the story of The World's End.
Okay. World's End plot.
Let's go with the plot. I mean, the beginning of the movie starts off with Simon Pegg's character, Gary King. All these characters are named after positions of royalty in medieval times.
That's true.
Which is a great little nugget. So they have Gary King, Andy Knightley, who is Nick Frost's character, Stephen Prince, played by Paddy
Considine,
Oliver O'Man Chamberlain, played by Martin Freeman, and Chamberlain's actually an officer in medieval.
Sister Sam, played by Rosamund Pike.
Yeah, Rosamund Pike is his sister
from Gone Girl.
She was in Die Another Day.
Die Another Day, that's right. Yeah.
And reunites with Pierce Brosnan, I believe, right?
That's right.
Pierce Brosnan is like the art teacher or whatever in this movie. Then you have Peter Page, played by Eddie
Marsan.
Who
I love Eddie Marsan.
And Page is like essentially apprentice. So each of these guys have their own specific.
Clever.
It's really clever. And then, not to get too ahead of myself, but did you see all the bar titles?
Yeah.
All like tarot cards.
Right. Exactly.
It's fantastic, and they all kind of have an image of what goes down in each bar.
Right, definitely.
So, but not to get too
far. That's because Edgar Wright is, he puts the thought and effort into every scene in his movies.
Yeah, it puts little details into things so you can pick up, like, hey, the first post, guess what that means? It's the first stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to be so stupid about it, but yeah, that's essentially what it means. It's like, this is the first spot we're going to go, and this is where our story begins, And that's essentially where the story begins for,
the opening scene is actually him at the, like an AA meeting.
No, because remember, it's him as a teenager talking about it.
Right, but we're getting the flashback, but the scene is narrated from an AA meeting where he's...
Sure.
The joke is that he's describing this awesome night of debauchery and drunkenness, and he's telling other AA members.
The first post. Yeah. So, essentially, as the story goes, he talks about him and his 5 friends, how he kind of judges all of them as they go along, and they go on this night of, as Michael said, debauchery. To hit 12.
Well, yeah, it's the last day of high school, and their lives are all ahead of them, and they are like the cool kids they think in high school, and they're going to get out of this town and they're going to change the world, just like everyone feels when they're 18 years old.
Let's make something clear. Gary's the only one that thinks he's cool. I don't know if the other guys think they're that cool.
Right, but they feel cool in
high school.
In his presence, kind of a thing.
So they go along the Golden Mile, as they say. We'll get into more of the bar names in a minute, but they go along the Golden Mile, and there's a nice little backstory of how they couldn't actually complete the Golden Mile. They got, I believe, 9 bars in, and
Oliver dropped out, I think, by 6.
Yeah, Oliver dropped out by 6. Peter Page got lost in the woods.
Yeah.
Or they left him in the woods, after they smoked a little weed, and then they all leave off to go to the hills.
Reverend Green.
The Reverend Green, oh my God.
They're drug dealers.
There's so many great names and little... I'm surprised we have it on our list, but at the same time, it's one of those movies that is not essentially a bad movie. It's one of those movies that, if it just changed a little bit, could have been great.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. I enjoyed watching it. I just think a couple little tweaks, and it would be eminently rewatch as much as Shaun of the Dead is, because Shaun of the Dead is perfect. I wouldn't change one thing in that movie.
Shaun of the Dead doesn't really need to be worked on. I think there's not enough in Hot Fuzz to work on.
Right.
Maybe some of the messaging behind that movie, but this movie seems like the movie that we can definitely tack on and make it probably one of the best trilogies of like 3 movies made by the same director.
Yeah, and a thematic trilogy, which is nice, instead of just giving us the same characters in different situations over and over again. The themes that Edgar Wright has always worked, people growing up and sort of accepting who they are, and I think this one actually pays off the best in that regard.
All right, so we kind of got into the cast a little bit. Do you want to round out the rest of the cast all? I'm pretty sure we named everybody. We mentioned Rosamund Pike. We got Pierce Brosnan in there.
Yeah, Pierce Brosnan playing their like high school science teacher, I believe.
Yeah, Bill Nye has a character.
Yes, late in the film.
Late in the film, yeah. He's a disembodied voice, if you will.
Yeah, we'll take it from here. Favorite Bill Nye.
Oh my God, yeah, for sure. And then as we go on, the story, he's in the AA meeting and he goes around, and because of a comment, which, okay, this is the part in review of the film I find slightly weak, is that basically just because somebody commented to him, maybe that shows how fragile his ego is. Somebody made a comment like, oh, aren't you upset that you didn't finish it? And then he's like, oh, I'm going to get everybody back together and go do this thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're coming from a character who has done nothing with his life, and all of his 5 friends have sort of moved on and have families and businesses and whatever, and all he has is the memory of this night as the best moment in his life, and the fact is he never completed the task at hand.
Well, he himself admits to that, yeah.
Right, so, it's easy to see why he wanted to get them back together and do it again, because I think he feels on some level like he's a loser, and maybe if they recreate this night and they actually finish it, that things will turn around.
Yeah, his main point of this film is to, depending on how you want to look at the character arc throughout the whole film, it's either you can see it as a man trying to find acceptance in his old age. There's also a look at it as a guy trying to reclaim his former glory.
Yeah,
so it really depends on. There's two wavelengths of it. I think you can look at this film, which is actually something that kind of goes along with Edgar Wright on his films. Like in Shaun of the Dead, it was about a man trying to learn how to fight for himself. Basically, that's what I saw in that movie. He was trying to survive the zombie apocalypse. The main reason why he broke up with his girlfriend was because he couldn't,
Well, he didn't break up with her. She broke up with him.
Because he couldn't commit.
That movie's about him sort of reconciling his sort of romantic life, growing up in that regard, as opposed to sitting on the couch and playing with his friends.
Yeah, growing up.
Yeah, it's about trying to find a balance in your life where you give equal importance to the important aspects, and that's what that character figures out by the end. He's now spending all of his time with his girlfriend, and he still gets to go and hang out with his buddy.
Yeah, and then and the way I see it is he saw himself as a guy who couldn't really fight for himself, and due to the events of the film, he ended up kind of learning how to fight for himself a little bit more and more, and that's how he ends up getting the girl and getting the life that he wants. Mm-hmm. To have his girlfriend by growing up and all that stuff.
Right.
With Hot Fuzz, you have the duality of taking your job too seriously.
Yeah.
But also realizing it's finding a balance between, Edgar Wright's movie is all about finding balance.
Yeah.
Finding your balance between your youth and your age, and then finding your balance between your job and your real life. And this movie is about kind of like the opposite of Shaun of the Dead, I would say.
Yeah, well, in this case, I think
your youth.
Not trying to relive your youth, which is what the character sort of is trapped in. And I think of all 3 movies, this one is actually the happiest endings. I think everyone grows at the end of this movie.
As a group, happy? Yeah, I think I would agree with that. As far as all the characters having some sort of happy ending.
Yeah.
Maybe I would argue, if I'm just looking at one person, Sean from Shaun of the Dead, if I'm looking directly at just Sean, he still has his best friend, technically, and he has his girlfriend, and he has his life.
Yeah, but, again, he hasn't grown as a character at all. I mean, basically, the zombie apocalypse took his friend away and is now in his shed. He didn't do anything to change anything.
Right. I thought you were referring to the fact of his status, because as the status is concerned, I think Shaun from Shaun of the Dead has a better ending note, a higher reward as far as Gary King at the end of this film. I guess
Gary King becomes a hero at the end of this movie. It's like wandering the wasteland with his teenage buddies, kicking ass and taking names. It's exactly what he always thought his life would be, instead of just a pathetic loser in an AA meeting, which is what he was.
All right, you won me over. Okay, you got a good. All right, totally.
He's got a sword on his back.
I have a little small issues with the scene, some of the ending of this movie.
I did not like the end of this movie the first time I saw it. This time I watched it, I liked it a lot.
All right, anything else you want to get about into this plot of this movie? I kind of like summed it up. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's it's a guy who went on this quest when he was a kid to like drink at 12 different pubs. A pint at each pub, but of course they continue to do shots and smoke weed like along the way. He's at a crossroads in his life where he realizes nothing has turned out the way he wants and figures he'll reunite his friends and do this one more time. And of course, in the reuniting his friends, none of them want to do it because they've all moved on with their lives. Particularly his friend Andy, played by Nick Frost, who they keep alluding to an accident that occurred that sort of broke them up as friends. And we eventually get that paid off by the end. So effectively, he gets them all back together. They all go back to their old hometown from London to Newton's Haven.
Newton Haven, yeah.
And, they hit one pub at a time on their way to glory. Of course, a whole other plot kicks in about halfway through. Their take on maybe Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You could definitely see that inspiration right there.
Because not only is this movie about, like, finding balance, like, with, your youth and your current age, but it's also about how, even if you go back to where you came from, it's irrevocably changed. I mean, I think one of my favorite jokes in the movie is that every bar that they go to at one time had its own particular flavor and character, and now it's all effectively the same. Like, it's the same chalkboard.
Yeah.
They're selling the same beer.
The same chain.
It's like the Starbucksing of well, not America, but England.
Oh, yeah, it's a good commentary on that, and I think you actually could apply it to America.
Yeah.
It's a good commentary for worldwide.
And so, not only that, I mean, so you have that sort of aspect where your town is now just like every other town, but now everyone is effectively a robot.
Yeah.
So, and it's a slow assimilation. It's not like Invasion of the Body Snatchers where you fall asleep and it takes you over. You're given the choice here.
Oh, yeah.
To just sort of like accept things for convenience, which is how an invasion would actually happen.
Yeah, Gary King is definitely a character that's... I think if you watch it the first time, you might not like Gary King at all. He acts like a petulant child at times.
He's a real dick, and he thinks he's really funny, and he's not.
But I think after you watch the movie once, you understand the whole story, and then you watch it again, you really enjoy Gary King for the character he is. He's a guy who is just trying to get his buddies back for a drink, essentially. But like he's a loser. And one of my favorite bits of this movie, like in the beginning, where he goes to get Peter Page first.
Yeah.
Because he knows it's the easy one. He's the easiest to get. So he knows he's going to get Peter right away because he was so he influenced Peter so hard because Peter was bullied when he was a child.
Yeah.
And then the next one is Steven, and he plays on the fact that him and Steven are sort of rivals.
Yeah, romantically.
Romantically rivals and all this stuff like that. And so he knows he can convince Steven for that one.
Right.
And then he knows Andy will be the hardest.
But if he has those two, if he has Steven and he has Peter, he can probably get Oliver.
He can probably get Oliver. And then if he has all three of them, he might be able to convince Andy, and then eventually he doesn't. Right. But what I love about his character is that despite the fact he's very much a loser, he's still very clever.
Yeah,
so in a scene where after a line called "Who's his helmet without a helmet?" as he was walking onto a construction site trying to get Steven, Steven tells him about this thing above a door.
Right.
Called a... Oh my goodness, I'm so mad right now. But okay, he tells him about this thing above the door that basically is what makes a door.
Right.
And then he uses it later
in the next
on
scene,
to convince Andy, like, hey dude, this is not a door. Like, you're showing me the door. This is not actually a door. It's more like a window.
Yeah.
It's a window. Like, it's so clever how he just picks up things and goes along.
No, he's a great character.
It's a fantastic character.
Who is dressed essentially the same that he was dressed in high school. He's dressed like the lead singer for Sisters of Mercy, which is hilarious.
Well, he's the, I guess, the representation of an aged goth kid.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Right. Not the eyeliner, really, because it doesn't have the eyeliner.
Right.
But he's got that, the dyed black hair. You could tell it's dyed black.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like,
he's such a funny looking
clearly, like, he had just filmed Star Trek where they had dyed his hair black, and, like, they just went with it, which was great.
He's introduced, and he gets all his guys back together. There's this bit about who's the dumbest one of us trying to... Which guy's the dumbest guy here?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And Nick Frost whistles and is like, hey, it's probably me.
Yeah.
So they're all waiting for him, and he comes back with the same car he had
from 1990, with the Beast.
With the same mixtape.
Well, that was hilarious. I think I put the song on a tape for you. Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, here it is right
This is the tape? Yeah.
And apparently, so on the commentary, they mentioned the fact that, I believe it was Edgar Wright, was saying that his buddy did that to him.
Oh, okay.
Where he had the actual, he said it was the actual mixtape. And so he enjoyed the joke so much, he put it into this movie.
Where did you find it? in the tape player.
In the tape player the whole time. Like, it's great.
There's a scene prior to this that I love, which is when they're still driving there, they stop because Gary King wants to use the toilet, and they're all sitting around waiting for him, and they're waiting and waiting and waiting. They're like, well, what's taking so long? And then they look over, and he's sitting and playing a video game.
Need for Speed, yeah.
He's playing Need for Speed. Like, he's such a dick. Like, he finally gets all these people back together, and it's still like, I don't even care. He's going to do what I want to do.
Every time the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, man, why do I have problems with this movie? I don't know if I do. I end up having problems with this movie that I wrote down, but
there are a few problems.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah. So this plot goes on, and they're hitting each bar, and each bar is effectively the same, and they get to one. But my favorite is the famous cock, which every bar he goes into, he thinks everyone's going to know who he is because he was such a legend in his own mind when he was a kid, and nobody knows who he is. But he gets to the famous cock, and they know exactly who he is because his picture's on the wall because he's banned.
Which is
exactly.
Yeah.
So. Also, I really like that he's so insistent to do this the Golden Mile that he has to have a pint and everything that he actually drinks leftover drinks that are outside the bar, like on a table, which I thought was really. So I don't know which is it the fifth bar that they get to. That's where they run into the teenager.
I believe it's the Cross Hands.
Yeah.
So that would be the fourth bar or the fourth or fifth bar.
Right. Cross Hands being cross meaning fight. The thing is they. Gary starts a fight with a teenager in a bathroom because he thinks the teenager thinks he's cooler than him.
Yeah.
It's so funny. And it turns out the kid's an android, although they call them blanks in this movie. They actually have a long scene trying to figure out names for these robots because they're not actually robots, because the actual robot is a Czech word which means slave, and we're not slaves. So when they punch or break any of these robots, who break really easily, this blue liquid spills out, which I think is really hilarious because it reminds me of like
ink?
Yeah, like ink from like high school, which is, these guys are recreating high school things. So I thought that was a really funny joke.
They actually have that joke in the movie where they talk about like how we're going to walk away to London because they're trying to leave to London. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we're going to walk away to London to like blood on our hands, and they go, it's not really blood, it's ink. Yeah. We're going to walk away to London with ink on our hands. Right. Like, what are we going to do here?
Which is funny because it's a callback to Shaun of the Dead where he has red on him.
Yeah.
The ink is,
man, he ties in so much. It's so crazy. Man, this movie, man.
So now the robots are kind of onto them, or maybe not. So they know the robots know their plans for the evening. So they're just going to continue the journey now. They're going to actually do the Golden Mile. Whereas by the fifth bar, they were all going to leave. They had enough of
the fourth bar, where the fight takes place, the Cross Hands. Yeah. So they're all cross with him, and then a fight takes place.
Yeah, and they find out these robots are available.
In the fifth bar, the Good Companions, they decide, okay, let's all hang out together. Let's go through these bars. Let's go to the sixth bar.
I don't think it's like they want to hang out together.
No, they want to complete
survive,
it. So they can get out of here.
Because they know the robots knew that if they deviate from the plan, the robots will know something is up.
In the Trusty Servant, I believe they run into the Reverend Green.
Reverend Green.
I believe. Is that who's in that bar?
Yes. Yeah. Their drug dealer.
And then he kind of is like, guys, shut up. Like, don't talk to me. And then he ends up getting called and... Well, it's not going to end well for the Reverend Green at all at that point. Then there's the two-headed dog, which I kind of forgot what happens there. I think it's just a bar, right? They don't spend too much time there.
Two-headed dog. No, the two-headed dog is where they reconnect with Sam, who is with the twins, and then they have the fight in the beer.
Right, and then the twins combine, and thus they're the two-headed dog.
Yes.
Wow.
I know, man.
And the mermaid is the...
If every director would think about their movie as much as Edgar Wright does, we would have a plethora of great films at all times.
Now, the mermaid is the one that's kind of like the dance club, right?
Yes.
Because then you have the, as they call it, the marmalade sandwich.
Yes.
Right? The two blonde girls and the redhead.
Right.
And then they go on to, from there, after they... Who stops them there? Steven gets pulled away by one of his old friends. Like an old crotchety guy. He's
in Basil. It's Basil.
There you go. So when they finally get to this, the beehive, is when the robots, the blanks as they call them, because they're not robots. That's when they finally decide to swarm these 5 gentlemen. But we then find out that it's not actually 5 gentlemen at this point.
Right.
It's only 4 gentlemen and another blank. So something that is really cool that you could pick up on the second time of watching this film is once Oliver Oman is replaced, which Martin Freeman's character is replaced. He's a character that gets changed into a blank. I believe it gets changed at the same point he's lost at the right, by the sixth spot.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the movie is symmetrical to a fault.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when teenage O-Man disappeared, now adult O-Man is replaced with a blank.
And Gary King is so proud of him for sticking on, making it further, yeah. So something that I noticed in the movie, and actually is brought up in the commentary, so I can't take full credit for noticing 100%, but at the point of his switch, his Bluetooth stays on. So the flashing light of his Bluetooth stays consistent. So he's always getting fed information to talk about.
No,
so like as he kind of becomes their guide, so to speak, on like and giving subtle nudges to do things a certain way, he is getting fed information by the what do they call the network?
Yeah, the network.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And then so this whole incident ends up in a big old fight, correct?
Yeah.
Where you have everything being recreated essentially from when they were kids. Nick Frost finally succumbed.
Oh, when he finally...
Yeah, when he finally gets crazy.
Well, that's what we gotta go back a second.
Okay, sure.
When they find out that there are blanks, up until now, Nick Frost's character has not been drinking. He's only drinking tap water because he hasn't had a drink in 16 years or something like that.
Right. And Gary King has that great line. He goes, "A man of your legendary prowess drinking fucking rain." It's like a lion eating hummus. It's great.
So Gary has shown up with shots for each of them, and they're like, "Okay, well, let's just leave. We'll go back to London." Oh, Andy, Nick Frost's character. He's not drunk, and they got to him, and he's downing every single shot. It's hilarious.
Yeah, he just can't believe what's happening, so he's like, screw it, I'm drinking. The whole movie is just this whole sci-fi epic at this point. The movie turns from a...
just a sort of big, chill kind of movie of like old friends getting back together into a fight for survival.
It really worked. I mean, there were some bits at the end that kind of like...
I'm usually not a fan of these kind of movies where they just sort of like switch the genre halfway through. But, I don't know, man. Edgar Wright, what can I tell you? Like, it's handled really masterfully where suddenly the fact that they're fighting robots, it like makes sense. Yeah,
it goes on with like how we were talking about the themes of the movie and how one of the themes is you can't go home. Well, in this movie, they actually have a reason why you can't go home. Yeah. It's replaced by aliens.
Exactly.
Oh, blanks. Yeah, it's great. So once they get into the mermaid, they have the marmalade sandwich. They get through the beehive, which we discussed about. That's where the big fight is. The king's head. That's when Gary King decides to do his own thing, right? He decides himself.
On their way there, they lose Peter again.
In the woods.
Forest.
Yeah.
He gets overwhelmed by the blanks, and then they. No, at that point they're going to leave entirely, and then he breaks off from the group. Because he's going to finish it no matter what.
Yeah, and that's when, and obviously it goes into where Gary King gets into his own mind and sits there and is like, oh, I'm going to beat this thing myself. Like, I'm going to do this. This is me now. I got to do this for me. Not for the group, for me. And it kind of goes to show you what now just Steven and Andy think of Gary. They actually do care for him.
Yeah.
They actually do kind of come back for him. Well, they actually...
Andy goes right after him.
Yeah.
I mean...
And then Steven goes off with... No, Steven gets lost in the woods too? No.
No, Peter gets lost in the woods. Steven gets the car.
Steven gets the car with Rosamund Pike's character, Sam.
No.
Don't they send Sam off?
No, Gary sends her off.
Right.
Yeah. But that happens earlier.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm confusing some of this movie together.
They regroup at the sort of golf club place where they're expecting Gary to show up with the car to take them out of there.
Right.
And instead he sends her off so that she can be safe, which he thinks is a really noble thing. But then she was the only sober one, so it was actually kind of a
that whole scene where they're trying to figure out who's real.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Yeah. No, that was great. Absolutely. Which they figure out that the blanks are they're recreations of you, but they won't have any alterations to them, which is kind of a thing that they did in the Thing remake as well, where like people won't have fillings because when it recreates you, it can't recreate anything inorganic. So when it recreates O-Man, who is named O-Man because he has a birthmark on his temple that looks like the number 6, like the Omen, like Damien, and he's since had that lasered off. And now when he's replaced, the 6 is back because it should be there because that's genetically how he was put together.
Which is funny because, watching the second time, you see it. Yeah. You're like, oh, great makeup, guys.
Yeah.
You're really good. At that point, they go on and they try to figure out who's not a blank and all that stuff like that. They show off different scars and then eventually ends up with Gary not really showing off a scar too much.
Yeah, well, they tell him that they can they can prove that he's human by looking at his arms because he had a wound there at one point, but he refuses to show them that.
And then he ends up smacking his head into a post.
Yes.
Yeah. Repeatedly.
Because only Gary would be dumb enough to do that.
Exactly. I love the fact that he tried to like pass it off as the tattoo and stuff like that too.
Yeah. His sister's a mercy tattoo.
Sister Mercy's tattoo. It's so funny. Then from there, like what? All right. I guess I forgot what happens to Steven at this point. Because he gets separated off the main two.
Well, they're about to all run together to get to a car. And Gary runs off first because he's going to go to the King's Head. So Steven and Andy are going to go get the car and leave anyway. But Andy can't leave Gary behind, so he goes running after him. So Steven goes to get the car, and Andy goes after Gary.
Right, and they end up with the hole in the wall.
Yeah.
Now, the hole in the wall. What happens to the hole in the wall? Isn't the giant robot thing? There's a giant robot thing, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Lest you think this movie doesn't get even weirder.
No.
Oh, it does. Well, when they first get to the town, they notice that there's a statue of a giant knight, and it looks like modern art in the town, which hadn't been there before. And they're like, "What, is that new?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's modern art."
Yeah.
Well, isn't it a memorial to something? Yeah, modern art, which is a great joke. So eventually that giant knight becomes animate and is working for the Blanks. And so at this bar where Steven drives the car through the wall in order to save them, he gets overwhelmed by Blanks and this giant robot. They pull his car out of there.
Right. Okay, that's what happens. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
And then Gary jumps out the window and Andy jumps out after him.
Right, and then
Which all leads to the world's end.
The World's End, yeah, where this movie comes to a conclusion.
Yep.
You find out as they go in, it's not essentially just being replaced by blanks / robots,
Right.
androids, whatever you want to call them. It actually ends up being this whole alien invasion. This is where you find out it's actually like an alien invasion by the network. The network has come down to basically train the human race who are a bunch of drunkards and horrible people into being more acceptable,
More civilized.
for the rest of the universe.
Right, because we're troublemakers here on Earth. And this is not the first planet they've done it to, but apparently we're the worst planet.
Yeah.
And their invasion plans are not... it should be said that all the technological advances of the past 20 years have been the network. So laptops and cell phones and internet use, like, it's all them. So they're showing us that they can connect us in more amazing ways. And they would rather not replace us. They don't want us to be blanks. They just want us to accept and go along with their plans. Which, in the case of this small town in England, I think, 98% has been replaced? Two guys basically have gone along with their plan, and nobody else. They've had to replace everybody. And so, they have an argument. It's sort of like a rousing, what would ordinarily be the rousing speech scene in the movie, where they're essentially saying, like, you've had to replace this many people. I bet you've had to replace this many people in every town on Earth that you've done, because we're not going to accept you. We're proud to be the fuck-ups and belligerent people that we are, and go fuck yourself. In any other alien invasion movie, at the point where the characters make their final stand against the aliens would at least try to overwhelm them. This is such a nice subversion of that, where the aliens just are like, you know what, it's not even worth it. Bye.
Yeah. Well, it's great, because in the beginning of this whole scene, they talk about how Gary King is referenced as Gary King of the humans. Yeah. So the alien race actually thinks Gary is like royalty or something, right? Yeah. So there's this whole subplot of how he's royalty according to these robots. Right. Which is hysterical. So
and they start to doubt him. Yeah. They're like, wait, no, you don't speak for everyone, until his two friends back him up with everything he's saying, which is so funny.
It's so stupid. So another reason why
and there's something really hilarious about, like, the people saving all of humanity are these drunkards. Yeah. Like, to me, that's hilarious.
Well, no, it's a good commentary on what the core of humanity really is.
Right.
Is basically being able to have free will and being able to do whatever you want to do. Sure. Which is what they say. Yeah. And then the robot's just like, well, yeah, fuck it then. Go, bye. Like, okay. Right. You guys...
The aliens leave, but they all, this is another thing I really appreciate about it. You can't make a movie and call it The World's End and not have the world end.
Oh, no.
And it does. Yeah. Well, I mean, not what we're used to. It's not the fiery destruction of Earth. No. Instead, the aliens set off like an electromagnetic pulse that basically eliminates all of technology and sends us back to the Dark Ages.
Which is great. Yeah. And then the movie ends with them all kind of like finding their own purpose. The blanks are reawakened somehow. They leave it very ambiguous to how they're reawakened. Right. The blank for O-Man ends up retaking O-Man's old life, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's still mentally them.
Right.
but they're fed information and sort of hypnotized into doing things a certain way.
Absolutely.
So
It's
once
like
they
it's all your
woke up-
memories
Yeah.
are there, and all of your sort of characteristic traits,
Yeah.
but it is a robot.
So what happens is Oliver Oman gets which it's funny, he had his face broken in.
Yeah, he has the
he's
top
only
of his
a
head
mouth.
shattered off.
Yeah, he's only a mouth at that point. And he then has a dome.
It's a soccer ball.
It's a soccer ball.
Yeah.
It has like eyeballs drawn on it, right?
Yeah, they
it's
just
so funny.
sharpied on a couple of eyeballs onto the top of
He
it,
picks
like a
up
soccer
right
ball.
where old Oliver left off, and being a retailer in this whole horrible new
He's a real estate guy.
world.
Real estate
and
guy,
then Peter Page, his character, his blank is basically just a replacement for Peter in general.
Yeah.
Mike doesn't even notice. His kids love it. Like,
Exactly,
it's so
yeah.
funny.
The kids know, then no one else does. Funny.
A romantic love triangle, I guess, was sort of involved into the movie.
Yeah.
Which, that's something I didn't like too much in the movie, whereas I felt like Rosamund Pike's character, Sam, is only there basically to be a part of the love triangle. I really don't know what else she's there for, other than to come in, I guess, at the end.
Well, again,
Right.
the thing is, I said earlier, like, the youthful part of the story where they did this as teenagers
Right.
is mirrored again when they're adults. So it's absolutely symmetrical. So at one of the bars, Oliver's sister, Sam, played by Rosamund Pike, went into a bathroom with Gary and they had sex. It's one part of the crowning achievement of that night in his mind that he was able to do that. So in this film, she comes back in, but I don't feel it's about her finding her love in this way. And I don't think Gary actually figures into it at all. He thinks it's going to be something.
Right.
So I don't think there's much of a romantic triangle. It's the fact that Stephen had always longed for her romantically, and Gary only just ever thought of her as somebody to fuck. And so this is a chance for Stephen to get what he always wanted, which was her hand.
Right.
So she should have been in the movie more.
She should have been in the movie more. I think she should have stuck around a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Maybe it could have been a nice little, like, okay, at this point, usually the female gets turned away in this,
Right.
in the old story when he was a kid. But this time, because it's a completely different happenstance, it's now body snatchers. She
Yeah.
sticks around.
Right.
And it kind of like...
They could have done
and
that, yeah.
that would have been cool as if they could have
I
done
mean,
it
she does
where
pop back up, but...
it would have pissed off Gary, too. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's not the same thing that's happening.
Right.
That would have been good, a little meta moment.
Yeah.
What else is about this movie, man? Like, there's so many good lines in this movie. Like...
Yeah, everything. Usually we list what's good and bad in this movie, and I like most of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general we could just go on the plain old review at this point.
Yeah,
because
that's what
it's-
we've been doing.
Yeah,
I mean,
like...
we're effectively just singing the praises of this film. I do have a few problems,
Yeah.
and I think whatever problems I have are... I don't think we need to break this up into what we didn't like and then how to fix it. I
No.
think whatever we didn't like is what needs to be fixed.
I believe at this point we've talked about everything good we can about this film.
Well, we could go on and on
We
about
could
it's
go
good,
on
but
about
you
this
know,
film, yeah.
But this
There's
is
so many good quotes, so
Yeah.
many good. I think we talked a little bit about it. Let's get more into the bad stuff and the problems that we think we can fix and how we can fix them. What do you want? What do you want to do first, Michael?
I'm going to say that the fight scenes in this movie were a real letdown. Like, I think they're clever in their conception, but while I was watching the movie, I actually thought, like, he must have made this before he made Scott Pilgrim.
Right.
And it turns out this is the movie he made directly after Scott Pilgrim,
Okay.
which is, to me, shocking. The fight scenes in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World are so electric and kinetic and edited. They're as good as anything. They're as good as any Hong Kong kung fu movie. And this isn't necessarily a kung fu movie, obviously. I mean, these are 4 or 5 white guys from England fighting, but you can tell the influence of kung fu is all over the movie. Particularly the fight in the beer garden with the woman with the legs for arms.
Oh yeah.
At one point Rosamund Pike takes an umbrella and is spinning it around like a staff. All of the sort of hand-to-hand combat are very, very kung fu, and it's not great. Like,
Right.
I expected way more from Edgar Wright. Everything else is so measured and funny and symmetrical and beautiful. So, I mean, if I hadn't seen Scott Pilgrim, I'd probably think this is really good action from the guy who made Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, but like after that, I can't imagine what went wrong there. I think, this is just a personal thing, obviously, but it would help the movie immeasurably if those fights were edited. I mean, you can take the way that they were shot, even just edit them a little bit better. I think it would. I would increase the enjoyment factor of the movie for me.
Would you? Because the one thing I'm going to say about the fight scenes, it felt like it was very ballroom brawl, but at the same time, they had a little bit of a measure of knowing what they're doing.
Right.
Would, in a scenario, maybe not enhancing the fight scenes too much, but maybe making it more of a struggle for them to fight? Would that help you out, in your opinion? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think he should have gone either one way or the other. Yeah. Like, if it was going to be, like, more fighting like, say, the movie The Warriors, which he even quoted in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, like, barroom fight, and made that a bit more stylized, I could see that. But he does take it to, like, this kung fu level, and if you're going to do that, then just go all the way with it. Don't kind of dick around. I mean, by the time the big fight with Pierce Brosnan and the Blanks, where they're all fighting at once, and they're all kicking ass, and Gary King is just trying to keep the beer in his glass, which is a great bit throughout that whole scene. Yeah. Like, by the time we get to that point, like, everyone's fighting like they just stepped out of a Jackie Chan film. So either go with that from the beginning and just say, like, in this world, this is how people fight, or make it a more stylized, brawling kind of thing. Because I think if he had done that, which I don't think anyone really has, I mean, The Warriors there's a fight scene in The Warriors during in a bathroom, as a matter of fact. It's one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen, and it's just because it's edited and cut together so well. Like, if he had done more of that, then I would be a little less harsh on it. But because he chose to take it to a kung fu level, make it kung fu, man. I
think it's he didn't mix the styles very well in the fight scenes. He went, like you said, a little too heavy kung fu. I can see that. I could see where he was trying to make. I could see his attempt to make it very much feel more stylized barroom brawl.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that combo of things actually mix very well.
No.
I think
it turns out it doesn't. I mean, he tried, but it doesn't pan out.
If I remember correctly, the only scene I sort of liked in the Wolverine movie, not the Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yeah.
There was like a bar fight, a sort of small bar fight with Wolverine and Sabretooth in that film, and that doesn't mix well at all in that film either. So I think it might just be a combination of things that don't fit well. If you're going to do a stylized fight in a bar, I think you just want to go for more of just like, it's a brawl, so it's going to be like just a mosh pit almost of like
these guys don't know how to fight. I mean, they barely were able to fight when they were teenagers. Now it's 20 years later. Like, they should be pretty bad at it. I mean, they make the Blanks pretty easy to overcome. I mean, you hit them hard enough and their head flies off.
Yeah, they're like pieces of lettuce or cabbage for heads.
Yeah, like it's like the vampires in From Dusk Till Dawn. Yeah. Like, they're really soft. You can just put your fist right through them. So, in that regard, he's given them the out that they don't have to be great fighters, but then he wants it to be exciting, and it kind of is, and it kind of fails.
Something I would actually attach into the fighting aspect of it is when they disassemble the Blanks, they kind of like don't have a consistency of how they're disassembled.
Right.
So like they're smashed, but you can also twist off the head. But you can smash them pretty easily with like a fist or a piece of wood or something. You would think squeezing it that tight to take off the top of its head would break their face too.
Yeah.
So there's some little weird inconsistencies.
They're kind of solid, but then they're kind of hollow. Yeah. Like they break off the top of Martin Freeman's head, which looks great. The visual effects are fantastic.
Oh yeah.
But no doubt. There's just nothing in there. Like, I don't know if that's a commentary on us or robots in general or.
Quick sidebar, but there's a bit at the end of the movie where Martin Freeman's smashed head is now walking through like some sort of like almost internment camp looking thing, and somebody throws like a quarter or something in his head.
Oh yeah.
Around. So that shows you like the detail they have in
that
was
good.
So that kind of brought up. So it's almost like a ceramic bowl, if you will.
Right.
There's some inconsistency, I would think, on that part. Also, how come more of the Blanks didn't reassemble themselves like the twins did? Is it because they're twins? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, like, when, like, the fight that we're talking about, the main sort of, the big brawl sequence of the movie, Pierce Brosnan's character gets demolished, and then another copy of him comes out, and then the rest of the bar denizens just put themselves back together almost wholesale.
Yeah.
And none of the other characters have done that. Like, when they have the fight with the teenagers in the first scene, like, they took these kids apart, literally, but they just stay taken apart. They don't attempt to come back at all. So
that would have been a good little callback, actually, to kind of like add into the film, where these teenagers come back to fight them.
Yeah.
Maybe they could have been like a sort of like boss fight, like, kind of like how the twins were.
Right.
Revisiting boss fight of these teenagers that are reassembled. So you have like the torso of the Asian kid that get dismembered in the sink.
Right.
And then you
have mix and match.
Yeah.
I know, because I mean, we wouldn't think of this except he brought it up with having the twins suddenly have legs for arms. Like, you could have done a lot with that, and it doesn't detract from the movie that he didn't get into it, but at the same time, he opened the door, so why not go all the way?
You could argue there's cool stylizations in there, but at the same time, like, there's no real consistency behind it.
No.
Which slightly holds back the film of making it an all-time classic to where it's just a really good film.
Right.
One of my points that I would like to bring up actually is Rosamund Pike's character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't see her enough. I mean, you get a presence of her character, so she's definitely like a secondary character. But because of this cast is essentially 5 white dudes, I would have liked some more diversity in the film. You know,
yeah, that movies made by people with what they know, so you can't really fault them. But like, hey, maybe one black character.
You know, I was noticing that, but like Newton Haven doesn't have one black person in it.
Right.
You know,
which might be just small town England.
Small town England, yeah, okay.
But
even if you
small
go
town
that
England,
way,
1990, like there's plenty of Pakistani people. There's plenty of other nations that are living.
Other than the twins and then the Marmalade Sandwich, you had basically them. The twins were oddball creatures, and the Marmalade Sandwich, as they called them, those 3 girls, were just basically sexual desire objects.
Right.
Other than Pike's, I guess, kind of heroic, like 1 or 2 heroic moments where one, she saves Steve, and then when she comes back at the end, there's no real, like, I don't know, like, female-driven angle here.
No.
Which is not something that necessarily, like, needs in every bit of film, but just because you have 5 white guys in this film, it would be nice to have a little change of pace.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're calling out Steven Spielberg here, right? But no.
No, not really.
No, but Edgar Wright is such a forward-thinking guy, and he makes such great characters that it does feel like a bit of a failing. That this is like, there's the Bechdel test, the Bechdel test. Like, do you have more than one female character in the movie? Do they talk to each other? Do they talk about something other than guys? I don't think this movie passes that test.
No, I believe it doesn't, and it's more of the fact of it doesn't pass based off of mittens, not based off of being a bad representation. It doesn't have 2 female characters. It has 1 female character, and that's about it.
Well, I mean, they're the twins, and then there's the one. I know, but like as far as main characters go,
it has a name because you only refer to the twins as the twins.
The twins, right?
And
they only refer to them as the twins.
And then the Marmalade Sandwich is only referred to as the Marmalade Sandwich. Like they have names as far as like a quick family name,
right?
But it's 2 blondes and a redhead, and they're called the Marmalade Sandwich. Yeah. It's a little odd.
And you could say, like, other than the main characters in the movie, everyone else is effectively a robot, so they can get a pass on it.
They can get a pass on it. But I think if you look at a movie like Shaun of the Dead, it's just an indifference, and even Hot Fuzz, I'll get into both. Shaun of the Dead, you have 2 female characters that were kind of badasses at times. Mm-hmm. In fact, Shaun of the Dead, one of the things that was great about that movie was that the co-lead, the co-female lead, was a fantastic actress. She was a great choice, and she helped carry the movie and drove home a point. Whereas in Hot Fuzz, okay, the 2 main characters are 2 main dudes, but then you have a small side character that's a female that basically has a running joke where it's like some sort of sexual humor with her.
Right.
But then she kind of like is like, oh, when it's pushed to a step too far, I'm going to knock out the person who represents everything that I dislike. And then you have other female denizens of the city that are, I don't know, figureheads of their respective areas.
Right.
That are female. They're older females.
Sure.
But this movie, it really feels like a bunch of white dudes.
And like, like I said, the problem, it isn't apparent in the movie. Like, we're kind of nitpicking at this point because it's a good movie.
Tremendously nitpicking, actually.
But I will say, like, this movie on the heels of Scott Pilgrim, like, these problems become magnified in my mind. Because in Scott Pilgrim, you have, half a dozen really strong, good female characters in the movie. And then you watch this movie and there's basically one, and she kind of doesn't really do anything except drive them home at the end.
Yeah, and then kind of like an object of desire for Gary King.
Right.
And actually Steven up to a point where Steven actually has good desire for her, whereas Gary King just has a lustful desire.
Sure.
Which is not exactly something that, like, you want your only female character to be
exactly. They're either the whore or the
where,
Madonna.
like you said, in Scott Pilgrim, you have Knives Chow.
And Ramona.
Knives Chow probably had one of the best female character arcs of a movie not led by a female.
Mm-hmm.
She went from this really, like, timid little tiny girl to a girl making a strong, willful decision.
Yeah, man, she's a badass by the end of that movie.
And then Ramona Flowers, of course, is Ramona Flowers. Then you even had some of the evil exes being a female and stuff like that. It was two of them, yeah.
And Scott's sister, played by Anna Kendrick, and Aubrey Plaza.
Aubrey Plaza was in the movie.
It's like
the drummer was female. Like
that's right, man. It's like on and on and on. So like again, apples and oranges. They're 2 different movies, 2 different experiences, but when you see what he's capable of, and then he just sort of shrugs it off to do this other thing, it's a little bit
absolutely
troubling.
But then at the same time, you can look at this film and then look at, say, another film he has a screenplay credit on with Ant-Man, that you could tell, like, maybe he learned his lesson from having not so many strong females and had one of the best strong females in Evangeline Lilly's character in that movie. You know,
another problem I have with the movie is that I think the villains are too weak. Like, you know, we mentioned how easy it is to like to disassemble them and take them apart when you're fighting, to the point where there's a scene late in the movie. It's a scene where Gary has finally run off on his own to complete this without his friends, like effectively saving them and saving himself, where Andy runs after him. Now he's being chased by an entire town full of blanks. Andy is running in the middle of, none of them turned on Andy at that point and attacked him. Like, he's just like pushing them out of the way to get to his friend. Like, there's a definite lack of danger from these characters. I mean, you know, obviously they replaced one of them, and then they got another. It's more that we're being told that it's dangerous than we're actually seeing it. You know, it's not like the stakes are a lot lower. It seemed like an Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like, it's scary, and this movie was missing a bit of that. Somehow, I think the look of these creatures is great. I think when they turn their eyeballs on, and they turn into these like headlamp-looking things, like when they're running down the street, it is gorgeous, and that itself is frightening. Just having characters standing around staring at you is a frightening thing.
Yeah.
But when push comes to shove, literally, they seem like easily overcome by our heroes. So I don't know. It just didn't feel like they were in any kind of real danger by the end of the movie. We were saying earlier about Shaun of the Dead. Like, there's a definite sense of danger from the zombies. We see the results of it. We know that, you know, these characters are in danger from the moment the zombies show up in the movie. And in this movie, I didn't quite get that. I wish I had, because you know, it should be scary. Yeah. Like, they're in a horrible situation. I guess the movie is putting the comedy above the sort of other genre aspects, which is fine because it is a comedy. But then Shaun of the Dead was a comedy, and it doesn't shy away from the dangerous aspects.
Well, something it does, again, bring into like inconsistency. Basil, while talking to Steven in the Mermaid Bar, he says it's more of like a merger than it is a takeover.
Right.
So, as opposed to, like I said, cut out some of these attacking scenes and make it more of like these people are taken, not necessarily by like being overcome by them, not necessarily having to fight them or having these things attack them, just be swarmed by these people or something like that. I don't know. There's a way. Yeah,
there's a way. There's a way to do it, because what you're saying is true. Like, they make it into this sort of like us versus them, like fisticuff brawl, but really they're winning because they're convincing us to go with them. But we don't get the sense of why it's bad. I mean, you know, other than you don't want to lose your humanity or whatever. But like, I don't know. There's a definite problem here. Just showing something like Martin Freeman's character, like after he's already been taken over, like just a line or two about he's in a bit of torment. You know what I mean? Like, he's been replaced, so we don't get the sense of what the problem is anymore. He seems like the same fella. You know,
or it could have gone to the other side of it and shown that he's more at peace now. He doesn't worry about things.
Right.
You know, it could have been like where he's now accepted it. Not that he's been like hypnotized, but more of like, hey, as a character, I accept this is what has happened here. Right. Like, this is actually a good thing for me. Like, yes, I don't have my body, but mentally I'm so happy.
You know, like, there has to be something fundamentally wrong with him.
Yeah,
like,
that's true too.
It's just the same guy. He's just positive and upbeat again. Like, if it had been like a fundamental shift, like this is what they did, I think, really well in the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's no longer that person. I mean, it looks like them, it sort of talks like them, but there's something off about it. Like, if Oliver had been like an extremely angry character, and then suddenly he's passive and smiling, it'd be like, well, you're not you anymore. So that I don't want to be one of you because you're going to take away who I am. It just seems like he was kind of a nice guy, and now he's still kind of a nice guy.
Well, they kind of do slightly. They don't go far enough on him.
That's what I'm saying. Like, his personality needs to be radically different.
They don't. Yeah, it's kind of a subtle thing where he's now lasting longer on the Golden Mile as opposed to where he was before.
Right.
It would have been something where maybe they could have had like a backstory where Gary King really likes him when he's drunk. And he thinks he's way more fun when he's drunk. So now that he's drunk, he's acting more the same and of like being sober O-Man as opposed to really fun drunk O-Man. Right. So there's like that drastic change of like, there's something different about you, but you're not that drunk yet, so let's keep drinking. Right. You know, they could have motivated it that way. It's really hard to nitpick at this movie because it is so good.
I mean, we are nitpicking.
So one of the things that I want to bring up is this movie, and it's very surprising because usually when we talk about, in all of our movies so far, we've pretty much agreed that all the movies need to be shorter. I think this movie actually would be better off if it was a little bit longer.
I totally agree with that.
So at the end of the movie, you have this whole big explosion of the EMP wave that they have to outrun in the car with. They get away, of course, and then it kind of goes into the scene where everybody remembers that.
Yeah, it's basically a post-apocalyptic "Where Are They Now" moment. Like the end of American Graffiti, if that had ended with the world ending.
Yeah, which for style points, that was really different and interesting.
Yeah.
But I would have liked, and again, this is nitpicking, just to have a single scene with each of these characters. You actually end up focusing a lot on Martin Freeman's character, because his character is seen the most. He's the blank that, I guess, we spent the most time with.
Yeah.
So he's the blank that represents all blanks at this point, because the blanks, get rewoken, so does he. And then he ends up kind of walking through the internment camp, like I've mentioned before. Mm-hmm. Then he gets his little soccer ball head. I would have liked a scene where he's actually talking to these people more than just kind of like in the background where you can kind of sort of hear him speak.
Yeah.
To give him a scene of him dealing with maybe his ex-wife on a phone call, and then going into selling this hovel, if you will, to the new group.
Yeah.
Same thing with Peter, like his wife not noticing a difference, and then having a scene showing us where the kids love the fact, because his hand does crawl around a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, Cousin It?
Yeah.
From, Addams Family. It does a bit like that. But it doesn't actually give you a scene where he's talking, and you can tell, the family's happy that they have our new robot blank husband as opposed to the old one. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with Steven and Sam, who they say end up together.
Yeah.
You don't really even get a close shot of them. It's kind of just,
it's all real throwaway. It's nice that we get to keep up that we get a moment of each of the characters and see what they're doing, and
extend that out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Put another 15 minutes in this movie. Give them all a scene, and then honestly, give me more of that last bar fight of with Gary King and the younger replicants, the younger blanks of his friends. That would have been great too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I agree with you totally. I think we needed maybe just a little bit of a beat with each of the characters at the very end to see how happy they all are. But I also would have front-loaded in at the beginning of the movie when we meet them all as adults, just the same thing. Give them one moment where we see, we get Nick Frost's character and we find out late in the movie that his wife left him. We needed to see a little bit of that. What we get is everyone's happy and successful, and that's because Gary's perspective is they're all happy and successful and I'm not. But a moment for each of them, even if it wasn't at the very beginning, we find out, as the movie's progressing, that they have these problems, somehow demonstrated, shown to us rather than a line of dialogue. It would be a little bit more impactful at the end when we come back and we now see that, these two are together and they're happy. I would like to have seen Steven unhappy with his, 26-year-old girlfriend.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
And Nick Frost, maybe at home alone, because his wife has left him, and he knows he's not going to get her back. Because at the end he's reconciled with his wife, and they're having a happy existence together.
You don't really get that in the beginning of the film.
No, we don't get it at all. And I said, so it's sort of like a tightrope, because we want to see them from Gary's perspective that they're successful and he's not, but they're not happy. And the first time I watched the movie, I didn't really get the happy endings for each of these characters. I just saw them sort of surviving in a post-apocalyptic world. But really, it is meant to be happy. They're all supposed to have found a place of happiness in this sort of new world. And I never got the sense that they were unhappy to begin with, so what do I care?
So I have an idea, actually, that just kind of popped in my head here. What if they had that post-apocalyptic campfire scene in the beginning of the film as well as the ending of the film?
Yeah, it could have been a what the hell is going on here moment.
Yeah. Have Gary King actually be in a post-apocalyptic AA meeting.
Yeah, right.
And that's what he's talking about there.
Or maybe make Andy the narrator of the movie.
Oh yeah, because the end of the movie,
it's him telling around the
what
campfire.
happened to Gary and all this kind of stuff like that. That would have been great too. I think that would have been. I think a lot of the feedback I get from this movie is that they watch it once and they're like, "Oh, I really didn't like the end." Mm-hmm. And then you watch it again, and you're like, "Oh, I get it more."
Yeah.
But I think if you add that post-apocalyptic campfire scene tied in to the beginning of the film as well as the end, you can kind of have a breakdown of all the characters in the beginning of the film. Mm-hmm. You see what happened, and you know some sort of impending doom is happening. So maybe that takes away a smidge from the plot, but not enough to where you don't care about what happens.
Yeah, I don't think it would hurt. I don't think it would hurt the narrative at all. Like having Gary sort of narrate the opening is fun because he's kind of, you know, this full of himself character, and he sort of mythologizes what they're doing and everything, but he's going to do that no matter what. Like, as soon as he's get them back together, he's doing it. So we didn't necessarily need to hear his voice at the beginning. It maybe should have been Andy's. It would soften the blow at the end.
It would soften the blow.
Because you'd be so confused as to what the hell is going on with their, like, this post-apocalyptic campfire scene that he's telling the story about, that when it finally came back at the end, you're like, oh, I get it.
What else? You got anything else?
No. I mean, it was like, I finished watching the movie and I thought, what the hell am I to try and make this movie better? You know, I mean,
that's how I really felt too. I was like, shit.
Yeah, man. I mean, this isn't a Michael Bay film. Yeah. Like, you know, it's just rife with possibility to make it better. Like, you know, these guys are really accomplished. Edgar Wright is a thoughtful filmmaker.
Oh, I can't wait for Baby Driver.
Me too, and that's why we're doing this podcast, to tie in with Baby Driver. But like, I'm very excited for that movie.
Movie looks great. Simon Pegg, man, like, you know, the one thing I can count on with Simon Pegg, no matter whatever he does, he is. I feel like he's all in, and he puts on a good performance.
Totally.
Even if I don't like the a couple of Mission Impossible movies.
Yeah, that's not his fault.
His scenes are great.
Yeah,
he brings in.
And you know what? I was unhappy with the first two Star Trek movies and his movie that he co-wrote.
Right, yeah.
I thought it was great. I thought
it was so much better. Yeah.
To me, it felt like original Star Trek again.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the first time.
But even him. In those Star Trek movies that were kind of like trying to be Star Wars, his character felt like a Star Trek character.
It was Scotty, man. We got Scotty again. Like, a bunch of those actors, I think they're really dope with that. But just, you know, creative. Give it to him. He knows what he's doing. Like, the guy's phenomenally talented.
And, you know, a lot of the smaller movies that really don't get a lot of press, like the Fear, it's like the Fantastic Fear of Everything.
Oh yeah, sure.
You know, that movie is really an odd film.
Yeah,
but man, he brings it. I feel like Edgar Wright is on the precipice of being like the Britain's Tarantino.
Yeah.
You know, like I think
he's better than Tarantino though, because he's more visually interesting, and it's a visual medium. Like, if Tarantino wrote a book, I could read that book and go like, this is some of the best writing I've ever read. But his movies don't. I mean, he's getting there.
Yeah,
I think from Kill Bill on, I think he started finally paying attention to the camera in a way that's more interesting than just like, well, let me shoot it from behind the guy's head. You know what I mean? Like, that's his. That's him being visually interesting, like in Pulp Fiction. Like, I won't show you the guy who's talking. But Edgar Wright is like, he's a real visual stylist. I think he could, you know, perfect example. Do you remember The Grindhouse?
Yes, I do.
His fake trailer for the movie Don't is, to me, the best thing in that movie.
Really?
That's I'm talking about, like 3 or 4 fake trailers and 2 full features. The best thing in that movie is 2.5 minutes of Edgar Wright's trailer, because it's so perfect. It's such a, like, 70s Amicus Hammer horror, like, I don't know. I think the guy's a better director than 90% of the directors out there today. I'm talking Zack Snyder. I'm talking, I won't say David Fincher, because David Fincher is probably the best guy working today. But Edgar Wright is really high on the list. Like, if I see his name on a poster, I'm going to that movie, regardless.
I think he's in my top 2, easily. Like,
and he's and I said he's thoughtful, and he really is, because, you know, directors churn movies out, like, all the time, and he actually takes his time and tries to develop the story and get it to the point where he's happy with it. A lot of directors are just like, at some point, like, fuck it, we'll just go and do the movie, and like, let's start the movie without a script finished, like that kind of insanity.
The insanity of doing that, like, well, you know, those movies that, you know, have the script not finished, and then it's more of a director showpiece than a written, writer-driven movie. And I don't know if you'll agree with me on this one, but I think on movies that have the better script, I think we could talk. I think you actually said it earlier, so you will agree with me. If the core of the movie is better, but because the script is better, the movie overall is going to be a better movie, and more rewatchable, more quotable, more everything. It's a better film without a script. You know, if you're just trying to carry on with the director, say like the latter pirate movies were very Gore Verbinski. Like, I know what I'm doing. Screw your script. We're just going to play it by ear.
But let's have some fun and improvise some stuff.
At the same time, you have a guy like who can make it work. Anytime Will Ferrell's in the movie, is it Adam McKay?
Yeah,
Adam McKay is behind the director's chair. He lets a creator create Will Ferrell, Steve Carell. He lets them do their thing,
right?
And it ends up being a fun movie. So I think it's kind of like different styles.
Sure,
some people can do it, but but only when it's like, I would say, more comedy based. It works.
Yeah, because
you're not taking it serious,
right? But you know what? It's funny because Edgar Wright makes comedies, so it's. I mean, I know it's two different sort of styles, but you could not show me a piece of footage of anything Adam McKay has directed and have me tell you it's an Adam McKay movie. I can tell you almost instantly that Edgar Wright directed what he did.
As far, I would say, Guy Ritchie's a British director.
Yes,
correct?
he is.
Now, would you say that Edgar Wright's taken over the top British director?
Oh, yeah. I think Guy Ritchie cannot touch Edgar Wright. I mean, he's got an interesting visual style of his own, but I think he's the kind of director who does start the movie without the script being finished. Like, we'll just let the actors, wing it.
Well, and it's King Arthur, you probably agree.
King Arthur, but, I know that, whatever the last Sherlock Holmes movie was, it was, the sort of the same situation. It's let's just go. We'll, work it out on the set. And a Sherlock Holmes movie you're going to work out on the set? It's supposed to be, the most measured and thoughtful thing. And I recently read an interview with Edgar Wright, and they were talking about improv on the set. And his take was, and I thought this was fascinating, because you never hear this, he said, improv always ends up being two actors trying to outdo one another. It's always just ever an argument.
It's a pissing contest.
Yeah, and they're just trying to, each one is trying to get the last line for the scene, for their character to have the last line in the scene. And his attitude was, I already know how this scene ends, because I've thought of a transition. So I don't need your improv. It's all worked out. It's on the page. Let's get to where I need it to be and not where you as an actor needs to get off with, how clever you are.
With people he trusts, like Simon Pegg, if Simon Pegg comes up to him and is like, hey, let's change this line around in this scene, I'm pretty sure he'll buy into it.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying he's not open to
suggestion,
or collaboration. Clearly he embraces all of it, but he does have a vision, and it definitely comes through. Obviously, look, some movies are great because they're improv.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anything Christopher Guest has done is hilarious to me, and there's no script. There's just an outline. Anything on HBO will, Curb Your Enthusiasm. It works wonderfully. This is not that. These are movies. Yeah. These aren't just, pleasant whatever. Edgar Wright's movies I'm going to be watching for years to come, and, I don't know that I'm going to be watching Talladega Nights again.
Well, I don't know if I would say Talladega Nights, but I would watch Anchorman again or something like that.
Anchorman 2, which we waited how many years for? Yeah, it was dreadful. It was horrible.
The only good scene in that whole movie was the Battle Royale scene, and that was just to see who cameos.
Yeah, exactly. Right, the only good scene in that movie. I know, but I think we picked Edgar Wright's least successful film to do with this thing. Yeah. And I still love it. So
I don't know. Least successful. I think Shaun of the Dead and
No. I don't mean making money. I just mean from inception to the final product. Yeah. This movie has problems that I think can be fixed. And when I first saw the movie, like I said, I came out of it feeling it was okay.
Yeah.
And most of his movies, I'm like, that was great. I can't wait to see that again.
Yeah.
And even now that I rewatched it because I'm an idiot.
I know.
I'm like, what the hell was I thinking?
Feel the same way.
I love the movie Ant-Man. I do wish Edgar Wright had made Ant-Man. I've been trying to get my hands on his script forever because I want to know what the sticking points were.
Yeah.
I want to know what Marvel said that he was finally no. I don't want to make this anymore.
Was it Marvel? Because I never really got that full story. Was it Marvel that said no, or was it him that said no? Or was it mutual?
No, he quit.
He quit? He just up and left?
Yeah, because from my understanding, I wasn't in the room or anything, but Marvel kept pushing the let's connect the MCU.
Right.
You got to put this scene in here. You have to have this scene in here. Here's one scene that I know was not an Edgar Wright script.
Oh, the Falcon scene.
The Falcon scene.
Yeah.
So clearly that's we want to connect it up to Civil War. So you need to have this scene in. And I think his script obviously was a little more well-tuned and didn't have time to go off and do this side mission. So he felt you're pushing me in that way. But it couldn't have just been that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm wondering what else that we finally got. And obviously Adam McKay and Paul Rudd rewrote the script.
Yeah.
I mean, they're credited in the movie. So I'd like to know what was different. I don't know. I can't really say until I see it.
Yeah, no, it would be great to see what his original script was.
I mean, you've seen his the promo reel that he did to convince them, which is great. It's 2 seconds of Ant-Man beating up guys, but I loved it. I was so excited to see his movie. So I mean, I don't not like Ant-Man. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But
it's a movie that really grows on you.
Yeah, there you go.
But Edgar Wright is looking at Star Wars films, or at least it's rumored to.
This is a rumor I sincerely want to believe, and I worry that I'm going to be dreadfully disappointed in the end.
So what kind of Star Wars movie? Because you're the bigger Star Wars fan here.
Yeah.
What kind of Star Wars movie would you want from Edgar Wright?
I would either want a musical.
Wait. What?
A musical. I think like a non-traditional musical, like where it isn't necessarily characters breaking out into synchronized dancing and song, but like the Blues Brothers is a musical,
okay.
But their performances and stuff, something weird like that, something with Figure and Dan and the modal notes.
So wait, like the Cantina story?
Yeah, man. I would like to see that would be a great Edgar Wright movie. Watching him do a movie about Figure and Dan and the modal notes, touring the Outer Rim territories.
Got my money.
That could be fun, and no one would expect that from a Star Wars movie. And if there's only one human being on the planet who could pull it off, and that's Edgar Wright.
Pretty much, yeah. Wow.
So I'd like to see that, or I would like to see maybe a horror Star Wars movie, we keep getting the same fucking 5 stories over and over again, as far as what's coming down the pike. We know we're getting a Han Solo movie. We're probably getting a Boba Fett movie. We're probably getting an Obi-Wan movie.
Yeah.
But there's a gigantic galaxy of stories that they can tell that don't have to be tied in any way. And I'm more interested in those stories at this point. I don't need to know every goddamn aspect of stuff we've already seen. You know what I mean? I don't need to know about the guy who was running something in Empire Strikes. You know what I mean? Does everything have to be tied into the goddamn Skywalkers? How about tell me a story about one guy on some planet and it's a horror movie? That would be great to me.
I got you. I got the story.
Oh yeah?
I got the story, right?
Which one's that?
I got your horror movie.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, what the movie should be. Now you could tie it into the lore any way you want.
Yep.
You could put in maybe some side characters or whatever. Essentially, what the movie is a horror movie starring a Rancor.
Oh, okay.
So essentially, it's like a
Jurassic Park kind of thing.
Kind of like a Jurassic Park kind of thing.
Or Jaws, yeah.
But it's more of it's on the loose, kind of like a slasher film.
Yeah.
Using a Rancor.
Right. Yeah, that'd be great.
You can have it where it can even be like a bounty hunter movie where these guys are actually being sent here to stop the Rancor, so these people can repopulate their area.
Right.
But I think that would be cool. Right?
Yeah, that'd be fun, man.
Idea.
Another idea I had, we're fan fictioning right now, and I apologize, but I don't know if you've ever seen. It's been remade 20 times. They just haven't done it recently. There's a novel and a series of movies called Beau Jest, which is about. It's sort of a family film, not a family film. It's not Disney or anything, but it's a film about a family where one character. It's a rich family, and one character gets accused of stealing the family jewels, as it were, right? And rather than be arrested, he joins the French Foreign Legion, and then another brother joins to take care of him. So they end up in Algiers. So it's a French Foreign Legion movie where they're on this outpost in the middle of nowhere, and they end up having to take on the sort of local population, which are the sort of Bedouin characters and stuff. Make that, put it on Tatooine, have the Sand People be the villains, have this be the only outpost that they tried to put on there. Let Edgar Wright direct that movie. Yeah. I'd be in heaven, man.
Okay, I'm with you until one part. You said Tatooine.
Why?
I'm tired of desert Star Wars. Give me something a little bit more fun.
Yeah, but we're going to get plenty of non-desert Star Wars from now on. And, I think the Sand People were done a disservice in the prequels.
You got a point there for sure.
And, I like those characters. I think they're super iconic. I don't think we've gotten into them at all. Yeah. And I think this would be a nice sort of exploration. Because that's the thing about the sort of French Foreign Legion is, these guys, as heroic as they are, the end of Starship Troopers is effectively a remake of Beau Jest, where they're they're trapped in that one outpost, and the bugs are just coming and coming and coming. That's Beau Jest. They kind of ripped that off for that movie. But to see this movie with them fighting the Sand People, I'm in.
What else you got?
Nothing. I think we can't really fix this movie. I think the problems that we brought up are actually
justifiable.
Justifiable. I think that's the only thing you could do to improve the movie, because it doesn't need any help from us. I do think it would be a little bit better, with our changes. But this is the first one I've struggled with. The other ones, it's pretty damned easy, Oh
yeah, especially when you have a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing The Rock, you're doing Smokin' Aces. There are significant problems that can easily be fixed. This one was a puzzler.
Yeah, it was a little bit puzzling, but I think we talked about a few changes here and there.
Yeah,
changing some things around. Actually, most of these things can be done within the edit of the film.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I think you'd have to add some scenes really to make it better. The fighting stuff, yes, you could re-edit it and make it a little more kinetic.
The campfire scene could be in the beginning of the film.
Yeah, that's true.
You could just re-edit that in. Now, of course, extending some scenes, you would have to rewrite and add some things. Yeah, sure.
But even without that, I think those small few changes would be beneficial.
It would make the movie that, perfect into the Cornetto trilogy.
Yeah.
Whereas it kind of just ended okay. Like, a lot of people thought, oh, okay. All right, that's your 3 movies.
There's the end.
All right, cool.
Good.
Yeah. But I believe that's all I have. Anything else you got?
No, man.
All right, right on. So thank you all for listening to We'll Take It From Here. If you guys enjoy our podcast, please give us a follow on Podbean. We're now on Podbean.
Absolutely.
Give us a follow on Twitter, on our Facebook page. All We'll Take It From Here. Our email is WTIFHS@gmail.com.
Yeah, write to us and we'll talk back to you.
Yeah, even if it's bad stuff, like, seriously, if it's bad stuff,
I'm looking forward to hate mail.
give us some criticism, hate on us, we don't care. It'll be fun to deal with.
Yeah.
But that's also our Twitter handle as well, is WTIFHS. Thank you for listening. Before we go, though, I'd like to give special tribute to the patron saint of podcasting, Captain Colt.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you, Captain. And that's it. Everybody have a good night.
Say catchphrase.
Catchphrase.
Awesome.